What's older than we think? Flushing toilets date all the way back to the Indus River Valley civilization, back in 2000 BC. The ancient Romans, well, the wealthy ones, had central heating in their homes. You can actually still see the pipes in some of the buildings at Herculaneum. Sharks. Sharks as a family are older than trees. Escalators have been around since 1859, though they were called rotating stairs. The name Tiffany. It dates back to the 12th century, and has actually led to a thing in writing called the Tiffany problem, because you can have a well-researched historical novel that people just don't buy into, because you named your 12th century peasant Tiffany. It just sounds laughably anachronistic. Fax machines. They were invented in 1843. Before the telephone. And #X200B. The electric car. What is likely the first human-carrying electric vehicle with its own power source was tested along a Paris street in April 1881 by French inventor Gustave Trouvé. The first crude electric car was built in the 1830s, but it was essentially a semi-functioning model. The electric car was a direct competitor to gasoline-powered vehicles until the 1920s, when roads got better, people started driving further than the range of an electric car, and the world started finding major oil reserves. Ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids. The ancient Egyptians were as old to the ancient Romans as the ancient Romans are to us. The fact that the lighter is older than the match shook my head as a kid. It also gave me the curiosity to question things that seems obvious. I don't know if this counts, but dinosaurs lived on the earth a lot longer than most people think. When you think of dinosaurs, you think of their extinction, but they roamed the earth for 165 million years. Compare that to our 6 million and it's almost mind-boggling, at least IMO. Beer is thought to be older than bread. It's much easier to fill a jar with wheat and water, let it ferment, and brew beer than it is to grind grain, mix it, and bake it. I was really surprised to discover when Oxford University was founded. They don't know the year for sure, but they know there was definitely teaching going on there in 1096. Nintendo. This company was actually created in 1889. Brain surgery. In 1997, archaeologists discovered an ancient tomb in the French village of Ensisheim from 5000 BC, which contained the decomposing body of a 50-year-old man with holes in his skull. After a thorough examination, it was determined that the holes, located near the frontal lobe, were caused by a type of surgery, not by forced trauma, and the operation appears to have been successful because the wounds healed before the patient's death. To this day, however, researchers cannot say for sure what exactly the surgery was trying to fix. National Geographic was founded in 1888. Contact lenses. Leonardo da Vinci had the idea of contact lenses in 1508, and the first successful contact lenses were made in 1888. Wristwatches. Queen Elizabeth I got one in 1571. Beer. It's one of the oldest prepared drinks in the world. It not only predates every civilization but actually contributed to their creation. The AUX connector that we still use for headphones and speakers was invented in 1877. There have been improvements since, but the basics of it are pretty much the same. Stonehenge. It predates the oldest pyramid in Egypt by nearly 300 years. Oxford University. It's older than the Aztec Empire. Trees. There are a lot of trees that are way older than you would expect. Social media. Wealthy ancient Romans had a system where they used slaves as scribes and messengers in order to share gossip and art/poetry and news updates with friends in their social circle. The sentiment that modern society is degenerate and that the youth are to blame is, IIRC, one of the oldest things we have written down. That I can remember off the top of my head. Cato the Elder complained that the younger generations were becoming too Greek, and Socrates used to complain that the younger generations were ruining their brains by writing instead of memorizing information. There are far more older examples, but those are the oldest I remember. Maybe Socrates was onto something tongue sticking out. The year 1990. We are as close to it as we are the year 2050. The food at the back of your cupboard. Netflix. I feel like it is only a few years old, but it was invented in 1997. Cruise control, power windows, and automatic headlights. I saw all three on a 1955 Cadillac. Oh, and the radio on it had a seek function. Astronomer here. The star, HD 140283, also nicknamed the Methuselah star, is about 200 light-years away from us and looks nondescript. However, if we take its composition and compare it to our standard models of stellar evolution for other, better-studied stars, the star's age pops out as 14.46 plus or minus 0.8 billion years old. Let me remind you, the universe is thought to be about 13.8 billion years old, and we don't think we got the first stars until maybe 200 million years after that. Obviously, we do not think the Methuselah star is literally older than the universe when it is more likely that we just don't understand stellar evolution for stars like it super well. However, it is exciting because it is undoubtedly a very old star, and currently we do not have any observations of what the first stars were like in the universe. Called population 3 stars, it's thought they were larger than stars are today because there were no metals from stellar fusion to contaminate the hydrogen gas, and they'd thus only live a few million years tops. As such, it's very interesting to have a very old star relatively next door to us in the Milky Way. It will be really interesting in coming years if other very early stars are finally observed to figure out how old they are, and how they compare to this one. The first carbonated drink to be sold to the public was invented by Swiss watchmaker and amateur scientist J. Schwepp in 1783, who sold his delicious, sparkling water to thirsty customers in Geneva. In just 7 years, he was doing business so fast that he moved the factory to London and introduced a new flavor, sparkling lemon, to stand out from competitors who were trying to imitate his drink. Google, Reddit, YouTube, it's hard to imagine that they already have been around for 15 years with Google actually being around 20 years old. An entire generation has now grown up that cannot remember that it wasn't always there. Sharks. As a species they're older than the rings of Saturn. The use of concrete. Its use goes as far back as the Mayans, but more notably in Egyptian construction as well as in Rome. The Romans had an arguably greater concrete mix than we currently have, but that was never passed down. Eventually the use of concrete fell out of popularity for centuries as we seemingly lost the information needed to create it, as if the recipe was thrown out and nobody wrote it down. Also Samuel L. Jackson. The man is 71 years old, but looks like he hasn't aged in decades. Silica sand, or industrial sand/white sand, is primarily composed of quartz. This is a chemically inert mineral with a solid hardness which makes it highly desired for the specific use of making concrete. Regular sand, like desert sand, has many more impurities like potassium, iron, carbonate and other stuff that makes it more reactive and gives it a darker color. A more reactive sand is bad for a concrete mix and will make the structure more prone to cracks and failure over time, whereas a chemically inert mineral like quartz is just what the doctor ordered. Silica sand has many uses like water filtration systems, glass and ceramic work, sandblasting and industrial uses, like making high-grade concrete. With the world supply of silica sand running dry at an alarming rate, with some countries like Vietnam at risk of running out of sand as soon as 2022, there is a need to find an alternative method. The Romans created concrete after possibly seeing the natural results through something called tough rocks. This is the combo of volcanic ash, lime and seawater. Because of the addition of seawater to this mix, two very rare minerals, aluminous tobermorite and philipsite, grow within the concrete. These minerals actually make the concrete mix stronger over time when exposed to seawater, which is in direct opposition to what happens to Portland concrete or basically any modern-day concrete, which erodes when exposed to seawater. We still do not know the recipe needed to make the concrete the ancient Romans made, but we can try to make it through reverse engineering and many countless experiments. Today scientists are not only looking into this, but also an alternative to modern-day concrete because of the diminishing presence of silica sand around the world and the carbon offset created when making it while trying to quench the high demand for concrete globally. If you think this is interesting, pick up a book or start researching into this and maybe you will be the one to find the solution to these problems. A Native American empire nearly a third of the size of the present-day United States existed in the Great Lakes region at the time the Old Testament of the Bible was thought to be written. Water. That water you're drinking is as old as the earth. Law. Roman law was so advanced that there are still large chunks of statutes, in civil law countries, taken pretty much directly from Roman codici written 1,500 to 2,000 years ago. Important maritime laws are adaptations of medieval provisions. Lots of business law statutes borrow heavily from Napoleonic laws. In common law countries, you find stuff like the Statute of Marlborough from the 1200s, still in effect. Along with still relevant case law from the 1700s. The world in general. The theory that if all of the Earth's history were laid out on a calendar, our current century would only make up the last 10 seconds or so of December 31st. Always blows my mind to consider it that way. Commercial aircraft. Most are 10 to 15 years old, yet a lot of people think they get replaced like cars. They are still very safe though despite their age. Touchscreen in cars. That has been around since 1986. Contraceptives such as condoms were around a very long time and made of hard leather. The word, meme. A large portion of autism spectrum disorders. About 40% of them have been in human genetics since around 40,000 BC. Goddamn genetic bottleneck causing supervolcano eruption. The 80s. They were 40 years ago, but it feels like 20 years ago. Lil Jon. While in college I discovered that my OL trusty pregame hype man was born the same year as my dad. I'm 30, for scale. Suddenly, snap yo fingers meant arthritic relief. The outline struggles with dementia in Out of Your Mind. Shots of Metamucil. Turn down 4, /cups ear /. What? The song, Friday. Technically, it's older than most third graders, having been released in 2011. Light. It may only take 8 minutes for light to travel to Earth from surface of the sun, but the light bounces around inside the sun for over 10,000 years before it reaches the surface. Oxford University is the oldest English-speaking university in the world. Teaching began in Oxford University in 1096 and developed rapidly from 1167, when Henry II banned English students from attending the University of Paris. The founding of Tenochtitlan in 1325 marked the start of the Aztec civilization, which makes Oxford University more than 200 years older. Oxford is also 300 years older than Machu Picchu and 150 years older than the Easter Island Heads. Humans with our intelligence and empathy and rationality. People in the past lacked education and our cumulative knowledge, but even cavemen thousands of years ago didn't differ too much from us. Cave of Forgotten Dreams, a documentary about cave paintings from 30,000 years ago, really drove this home for me. The art there is so expertly rendered it really shows a thinking and curious mind. Electric cars. The first electric car capable of carrying a person was invented in 1881. The dinosaurs. They didn't know what grass was. I have a bottle of shampoo from the GDR. The AIDS virus, 1959. Chuck Norris. The dude is 80. The Stanley Cup. It predates the NHL, and if you look at the history of teams that have won it, there is a year where it wasn't awarded due to the Spanish flu pandemic. The top of it is the original trophy, but the rings on the bottom are replaced every couple of years when they fill up with names. Paul Rudd and Gwen Stefani are both older than Ted Cruz. We are farther from the release date of the first Back to the Future movie than Marty was from 1955. Santa Fe. Oldest capital city in America, being declared the capital of the New Mexican Territory by the Spanish Crown in 1610, making it 410 years old, far older than the US itself. In my experience, a lot of people I know personally don't realize that music cassettes were invented in the 60s. Cassettes didn't really take off in the States until the late 70s, but the first albums released on cassettes hit shelves in 1966. Aboriginal Australians. A lot of fads have this sense of modernity to them, that you have an Instagram influencer pushing a product and everyone leaps onto it in order to be hip and cool, but it's nothing compared to the way people followed trends in the past. I've written about the case of French people, having rectal surgery because it was fashionable, before, but there are dozens of examples. Even something as basic as the fork only became popular because Catherine de' Medici made it trendy in the courts of France. Before then, it was considered positively barbaric because it allowed you to eat too quickly and without grace. And then there are the fashion trends that were literally lethal, like lead oxides to whiten skin for purely aesthetic reasons. After all, pale skin meant you weren't tanned, which was hard to pull off unless you were rich enough that you didn't have to work outside. You don't see a lot of pale farmers. And then you get what we'd call viral challenges today. You think planking was dumb? Well, you would have loved phone booth stuffing, which was huge in the 50s and involved trying to cram as many people as possible into a phone booth. Why? Just because. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The theory of quantum mechanics. Some of the earliest discoveries in the field date back to the early 19th century, starting with Faraday's discovery of cathode rays in 1838, Gustav Kirchhoff's work on black body radiation in 1850, and Boltzmann's theory of discrete energy states in 1877. The name itself was coined by Max Born, Werner Heisenberg, and Wolfgang Pauli in the early 1920s. For comparison, the theory of plate tectonics was first put forward in 1912 and wasn't widely accepted until 1965. 3.5mm headphone jack. Made in the 1950s, for transistor radios, it originally developed from the 1/4 plug which was first used in a telephone switchboard in Boston around 1878. The song Black Betty by Ram Jam used to be a marching song in the Revolutionary War, and Black Betties were muskets. Of course the lyrics did change a bit, but it's still pretty cool that we're rocking out to songs created by people hundreds of years ago. Ferns. The fern, class Polypodiopsida, class of non-flowering vascular plants that possess true roots, stems, and complex leaves and that reproduce by spore, constitute an ancient division of vascular plants, some of them as old as the Carboniferous period, beginning about 358.9 million years ago, and perhaps older. Their type of life cycle, dependent upon spores for dispersal, long preceded the seed plant life cycle. For comparison, That puts them about 113 million years older than non-bird dinosaurs, which lived between about 245 and 66 million years ago. Cardboard. Cardboard has been around since colonial times at least. I learned this at the bookmaker's shop in colonial Williamsburg a few years ago. Totally blew my mind. Retractable roofs on stadiums. The Colosseum had a version of this called a velarium, which was a large awning that could be used to cover the seating areas and was controlled through a series of pulleys. The Colosseum also had rudimentary elevators, used mostly to transport wild animals and scenery pieces from the storage areas to the arena floor.